Welcome to the Cardinal News of Virginia, a podcast from Cardinal News. We're a nonprofit news outlet. We cover Southwest and Southside Virginia, paywall free at cardinalnews.org. The Cardinal podcast is sponsored by 5 Points Creative, a full-service, award-winning marketing firm serving clients all over the U.S. from their headquarters in Roanoke, Virginia. I'm Dutchie Jessee, today talking with Cardinal News' Roanoke reporter, Samantha Verrelli. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for joining us.
Of course.
You wrote recently, quote, "It's no secret by now that this year's budget in Roanoke City will be tight." End quote. Why is that no secret? Bring us up to speed, kind of set the stage.
Yeah, so City Manager Val Marie Turner has briefed the council a couple times in February, kind of just vaguely stating that the budget's going to be tight this year. On March 3rd, there was a joint meeting between the school board and the city council where we kind of got a better idea of how tight that might be and what kind of cuts the city is looking at.
Okay. Well, the council was briefed, as you mentioned, a few times on this. And then there's always a joint session between school board and city council. That's part of these things at the local level. What were some of the things that, I believe there was a report there with the company that the city works with, Davenport and Company. It's an independent financial advising group that works with the city. And they were going over that basically at the joint meeting at the time. They show in that report some key challenges that Davenport brought up. Mm-hmm. One of them having to do with the amount of tax revenue spent on schools in Roanoke City. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, so Davenport had kind of listed the school funding as one of their key considerations. They didn't really make recommendations as to what to do. But anyway, the city gives 40% of its tax revenue to the schools. That's been the policy since 2012.
Okay.
And Mayor Joe Cobb has said he is not looking to eliminate that policy. He did say he would be willing to adjust it. So this year, the school district has been asked to consider a level budget, meaning no increase from last year. And that is putting them at $7 million less than they had expected for the upcoming fiscal year, which starts in June. So it's the policy may change, it may not change. This is also coming at a time when the schools are really overcrowded. Our education reporter, Lisa, has reported that Patrick Henry and William Fleming high schools are 20% over their capacity right now. So the school district is looking to build a third high school, and that price tag could look like $150 million to $180 million just to construct the school. So there's a lot that needs to be done immediately to fix that overcrowding, and it's just a matter of where that's going to fit into the budget. But Davenport did go over that and just as a key consideration of something that we're dealing with now.
Do you happen to know, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just curious that 40% of the city's, of that tax revenue in Roanoke City going to the schools, is that about in line with the way other cities Roanoke size do it? Is that an excessively large amount, or is that, you said it's been in place since 2012?
Yeah, I don't know how other localities compare to that. It's been something that has been kind of contested. Like it's been a topic of conversation recently, especially within the mayoral election.
Yeah, and you said Mayor Joe Cobb doesn't want to mess with that formula, but he might. What did he say exactly? Can you?
Yeah, he had said he wasn't looking to eliminate it, but that they could look at adjusting it.
Gotcha.
But the Verletta White said at the meeting, the superintendent, that they need every bit of that 40%, especially with the fact that they're already overcrowded. They're already being asked to create a level budget. So, yeah.
Okay. Another challenge that was listed by Davenport is city employee salaries. This comes up, regularly in these budget talks, employee pay, capital improvements, which we may get to later. But employee salaries, what does the report say about that in particular?
Yeah. So, it doesn't say much about it in the report. Ms. Turner actually talked about this a lot during her report. Okay. She did a report kind of just on realities of where we are with the budget right now. And she stated that compensation is not fully competitive in the city right now. They did do $5 million in base salary increases since July of last year, but it hasn't been enough. It hasn't been sufficient to make Roanoke competitive to its neighbors. So that is something they're definitely looking to increase. The revenue for next year is going to look like $23 million in total, and a lot of that goes towards compensation, overtime, salary. So that's another big challenge that they're dealing with right now.
Was that comment or that report by Val Marie Turner, the new city manager, was that at the same meeting, like the joint meeting, or was that a separate event?
Yeah, there were a lot of briefings at that joint meeting. There was a school board budget briefing, a citywide budget briefing, a Davenport briefing. I think Val Marie Turner actually had 2 separate briefings on just the city's budget.
Right, and she's the new city manager. We talked about this in our last podcast. So she's new to Roanoke City, coming in, with a full plate, as any city manager would, I think. Yeah,
and she stated this is her top priority. Joe Cobb, the mayor, has stated the budget is also his number 1 top priority right now. And I think a lot of that might have dealt with the decision to put Evelyn Powers, the former treasurer, on the city council. She is aware of the budget difficulties and might know how to handle that.
Another thing listed in the Davenport report, a significant problem with, quote, deferred maintenance needs. What is that all about?
Yeah, so Val Marie Turner has said that there has been a backlog for a long time of these deferred maintenance needs, and that's HVAC, electrical maintenance, elevators within city buildings, kind of all these improvements that have just been put on the back burner for too many years. And so deferred maintenance and the schools are really the 2 of the biggest challenges within the budget right now, it seems. But Davenport has ran the numbers, and they think that $5 million a year is what Roanoke might expect to be spending per year for the foreseeable future on that deferred maintenance.
Are there any? It's always hard to prioritize because everyone thinks, well, this is the first thing we should, rightfully so. There are legitimate, valid, concerns and things that need to be taken care of. Is there any consensus on, as far as deferred maintenance needs, on like top priority? This is the place. Is it a cluster of buildings in downtown? Is it schools themselves? Like, that's the first place we need to do this. Was there any discussion about that?
To my understanding, it seems like municipal buildings and that elevators are a big issue, which it seems like such a small thing, but it adds up.
Oh, sure.
And Val Marie Turner had said the schools are, of course, a priority, but there is all this backlogged maintenance that we need to do. So I think it's just kind of catching up there.
So what was discussed, or might be discussed coming up from what you know, on ways to make up, to build a little more revenue coming into the city? I know they talked about the meals tax, and that's always a big topic that gets headlines. People paying meals taxes. So where is Roanoke City on that? Is it? I don't know what the rate is currently. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So Davenport went into this a little bit. Mr. David Rose, he is the representative who was giving that presentation. He said our current meals tax is at 5.5%, which he said is comparable to other localities. Franklin County, Roanoke County, and one more city that I can't remember off the top of my head are lower at 4 or 5%. Bristol's at 10%, Salem's at 6%, and Richmond is at 8.5%. So we're kind of on the lower end compared to a lot of other localities. And so Davenport had suggested looking into a 1% increase, bringing us to 6.5%. That would increase revenue $4 million for the next year. So, Faison Nash during the council meeting was even like, what would 1.5% look like? What would an extra 2% look like? Because that would be up to $6 million, $8 million. That is a favorable option to look at because the meals tax affects people outside of residents of Roanoke too, who are coming here just to eat dinner or grab a meal. And Mr. Rose with Davenport had also said a lot of times with those funds from the meals tax, rather than putting it in the general fund pool, those revenues are kind of put in a lockbox aside for things like deferred maintenance, school growth, which could be useful for Roanoke.
Yeah. Anything else from the joint sessions that have been held, or the joint session that was held before, but also, and we know that the public will have a chance to, come in and comment before a final budget is adopted. When is the final budget adopted?
The council's going to receive the recommended budget on March 24th. There won't be any public coverage of the planning or any creating of the budget from now until then. Mm-hmm. But after they receive that recommended budget and they do some tweaks, there will be public meetings.
Right.
I believe late April.
Okay.
When the public will be able to comment. And I will be covering from now until then.
Yeah. So do people have to be, by the way, live at these Roanoke Council meetings to comment?
That is a good question. I don't.
Isn't it?
You can watch the meetings
right.
from Facebook Live, but I think you have to be there in person to comment.
So is there anything else that you found interesting or that people would want to know about just in this early stage? We're not, they haven't presented a budget yet, but What else should we know?
I mean, a conversation that was interesting to me in the March 3rd meeting was about the Spanish and then the English learner programs. They were talking about potentially having to move some of the Spanish teachers into the English learner program. That is something that I will have conversations with Mayor Joe Cobb later this week about. But that was something that I found interesting. Just we're kind of waiting to see where those cuts are going to fall within both the school district and the city budget in general.
Yeah. Did they mention, we were talking about high schools and Roanoke outgrowing its high schools, basically. Mm-hmm. They were actually looking at the Jefferson Center
right.
to look at maybe a magnet school there. Has that been tabled? Has that been like, no, we're not discussing that anymore?
Yeah, the Jefferson Center is no longer being looked at as an option. It just wasn't big enough to fill that immediate need. It was a cool idea that was going to be like an arts sciences magnet school, but the other option too was to expand on the existing schools. But that they had a pros cons list that they showed at the meeting, and there were just so many more pros to just building a third school.
Right.
But now they have the issue of where in Roanoke do we have space to build a third school, because the city can't annex out, obviously. So a lot of moving pieces there. They, I believe they're putting together a feasibility study right now.
And what about other schools that aren't like the middle and elementary schools in Roanoke? Are there a lot of needs there? How are they doing in terms of crowding? Because as a person who grew up in Roanoke, they've closed, I don't know how many, but they've closed some former elementary schools.
Yeah.
And so that always makes news if they're shutting down a school.
Yeah.
But where are we with that in the non-high schools?
They cited needs for 3 more elementary schools too, which
Really?
hasn't been talked about as much in council. The main need right now seems to be the high school, but they cited a need for 3 elementary schools, which could have the same price tag as that one high school of $150 million just to build those 3, which is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot that needs to be done. I'm not really sure about the middle school level. That hasn't been brought up yet, but elementary and high schools are overcrowded for sure.
Cool.
Yeah.
Sam, you've told us about when some important dates coming up in terms of this budget, and people will have the opportunity to weigh in on that. If someone wants to get in touch with you as a reporter for something about Roanoke City's budget or anything else, how do they reach you? What's your email?
Yeah, my email is samantha@cardinalnews.org, and my phone number is on the website. Okay. Anyone can reach me any way is best for them.
All right. Well, thank you. And thanks for covering Roanoke City and Roanoke in general for Cardinal News. And I want to thank everyone for listening to the Cardinal News of Virginia. Thanks also to our sponsor, 5 Points Creative. Thank you to Cardinal News' Sherry Quinley and Zach Shelton for their technical support. And thanks for listening, everyone. Check us out at cardinalnews.org. I'm Dutchie Jessee.